Coming up on Arirang News. Since the Hamas militant group's devastating surprise attack on Israel from Gaza on Saturday, the death toll continues to soar with hundreds killed from both sides. With Israel declaring war and pounding Gaza with airstrikes, we take a look at how the conflict could ripple out to the rest of the world. In Afghanistan, search and rescue operations continue as thousands of people have been killed in a powerful 6.3 magnitude earthquake. The International Monetary Fund forecasts weaker global economic growth next year, slashing the outlook to 2.9%, driven by China's slower than expected rebound and the inflation's tenacity. The projection for South Korea was also lowered to 2.2%. Good evening. It's 9 p.m. here in Seoul. Thank you for joining us on Arirang News. We start in Gaza, where the fighting between Israel and the Palestinian militant group Hamas has been ongoing for days. Israel says it has secured the Gaza border as it bombards the region with airstrikes in retaliation for Saturday's surprise attack by Hamas. Hundreds of lives have been lost on both sides. Our Park Gon-woo has the latest.
Since Saturday's surprise attack on Israel by the Palestinian militant group Hamas, there have been over 1,600 deaths on both sides. On Monday local time, the government press office of Israel announced that more than 800 people have died in the Hamas attacks, with over 2,600 injured. Meanwhile, Israeli airstrikes on the Gaza Strip, according to the Palestinian Health Ministry, have led to more than 600 deaths. Hamas has also taken about 150 people hostage and is holding them in the Gaza Strip. Among the casualties and hostages, there are also citizens of the United States, the United Kingdom, France, Germany, and Ukraine, among others. Following Hamas's attack on Saturday, the Security Cabinet of Israel has declared a total blockade of the Gaza Strip and announced a final retaliation.
Dear Israeli citizens, we started, and I emphasize, we have only started to strike Hamas.
Israel has announced the mobilization of up to 300,000 reserve forces, and U.S. officials expect that Israeli forces will begin a ground operation in the Gaza Strip within 48 hours. Hamas has threatened to execute civilian hostages in retaliation for Israeli airstrikes. A Hamas spokesperson stated that they will execute one civilian hostage for each attack by Israel on civilian homes in the Gaza Strip without prior warning. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres strongly condemned Hamas's attacks on Israel while expressing concern about Israel's total blockade of the Gaza Strip. Currently, the South Korean government is closely monitoring the situation in Israel, and some of South Korea's long-term residents and travelers in Israel, totaling around 930 people, are expected to return home on direct flights by Korean Air on Wednesday, Korean time. Park Gon-woo, Arirang News.
As tensions between Israel and Hamas escalates, the U.S. has already begun to send military aid to support Israel, as it also plans to send an aircraft carrier and advanced fighter jets in the region. Our foreign affairs correspondent Bae Eun-ji takes a look at what potential impact this could have on geopolitics in the Middle East and beyond.
Following the unprecedented attack on Israel by the Palestinian militant group Hamas, which controls the Gaza Strip, a small area bordering Israel and Egypt, the U.S. has begun delivering munitions and military equipment to Israel. The White House confirmed this on Monday local time, saying that the first batch of military aid in response to the violent assault by Hamas militants was making its way to Israel. This comes as the country's Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin said Sunday that he has ordered America's most advanced aircraft carrier, the USS Gerald R. Ford, and its accompanying strike group to move to the eastern Mediterranean to support Israel. And the U.S. Air Force is also planning to send its most advanced fighter jets, including F-35s and upgraded F-15s, to the region to prevent the war from spreading beyond the borders of Israel. The latest move also comes as the Pentagon said the U.S. Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Charles Brown Jr., spoke with the Chief of the Israeli General Staff, Herzi Halevi, and discussed Hamas' attack. Meanwhile, after Hamas threatened to kill civilian hostages if airstrikes targeted the Gaza Strip, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said his military would attack Hamas with a force like never before. His remarks come after the Israeli leader reportedly told U.S. President Joe Biden in a phone call that a ground operation in the Gaza Strip was necessary. Citing 3 Israeli and U.S. sources, American news outlet Axios reported that Netanyahu told Biden that Israel had to go in and could not negotiate now, following Washington raising concerns about hostages in the Gaza Strip. As for the conflict's impact on the global market in South Korea, an expert says it's important to monitor the economic risks it may cause.
If the geopolitical instability continues, there will be less investment, and it could also cause unstable currency rates. We will have to closely monitor the situation for any global economic risk.
배은지, Arirang News.
And Afghanistan is reeling from a devastating earthquake, one that has killed thousands. Rescue authorities work around the clock in search of survivors. An Sung-jin reports.
A 6.3 magnitude earthquake hit western Afghanistan with an epicenter in a rural area some 40 kilometers from the city of Herat on Saturday. The latest reports have put the death toll at almost 3,000, with thousands more injured.
I lost 4 members of my family. Every house has several dead. I don't want to live anymore. I've lost my soul. I don't know what to do or what to say.
Tens of thousands of people have been displaced as houses in villages and districts of Herat province were turned into rubble. Residents remained on alert until Monday when periodic aftershocks continued to shake the area. The head of the World Health Organization emergency response said that women and children make up 2/3 of those admitted to hospital.
The earthquake happened in the morning where men were out of the houses, so majority of those who are injured and died are women and children, adding more pressure on women, adding more pressure on children who are the most vulnerable groups inside Afghanistan.
A UN humanitarian coordinator on Saturday approved a $5 million emergency reserve allocation from the Afghanistan Humanitarian Fund.
We, along with our humanitarian partners, are now ramping up to the response. We've deployed assessment teams, and we are providing emergency shelter supplies, blankets, warm clothes, food.
Local officials say the death toll is likely to rise as search and rescue efforts continue. Afghanistan is frequently hit by earthquakes, as seen in June last year when the eastern part of the country was hit by a 5.9 magnitude quake, which resulted in over 1,000 deaths. An Sung-jin, Arirang News.
South Korea, the United States, and Japan have staged a trilateral maritime exercise in waters off southeast Jeju Island. The South Korean Navy said Tuesday that the 2-day training, which kicked off Monday, comes after the defense chiefs of the 3 countries agreed to resume trilateral exercises during their meeting in Singapore back in June. It's also a follow-up measure to the agreement made during the Camp David summit to strengthen security cooperation amid escalating threats from North Korea. A trilateral maritime interdiction exercise was conducted for the first time in 7 years. Meanwhile, the U.S. Navy's nuclear-powered aircraft carrier, the USS Ronald Reagan, is set to dock in Busan on Thursday for 5 days. The Defense Ministry says the visit is part of Washington's commitment to further enhance the regular visibility of its strategic assets to the Korean Peninsula as Pyongyang's provocations continue. South Korea's defense ministry has assessed that North Korea is working to advance its nuclear and missile threats and the launching of a new submarine. The defense ministry noted in a report from Tuesday's parliamentary audit that there is always a possibility that North Korea will carry out various strategic and tactical provocations, including its 7th nuclear test. This, the ministry says, would be seen as a way to shift away from dissatisfaction within the regime stemming from internal issues with food shortages and failed economic policies. The assessment also comes as North Korea is this month widely anticipated to try for a 3rd time to launch its reconnaissance satellite. The International Monetary Fund forecasts weaker global economic growth next year, slashing the outlook to 2.9%, driven by China's slower than expected rebound and the inflation's tenacity. The projection for South Korea was also lowered. Our Moon Hae-ryun explains.
The International Monetary Fund maintained its 2023 economic growth projection for South Korea, but made cuts for 2024. On Tuesday, it released its final World Economic Growth Report for the year and summarized upcoming economic conditions as stable but slow. It maintained its growth projection of 3% made in July for 2023, but made adjustments to 2024, lowering the overall world economic growth outlook by 0.1 of a percentage point to 2.9%. South Korea's economic outlook was given a similar forecast, maintaining the same growth projection of 1.4% for the rest of the year ahead, but had its growth forecast cut by 0.2 of a percentage point for 2024. The IMF's prediction for 2023 is the same as the Bank of Korea's made around a month ago. The Washington-based agency attributed the stable economic conditions for the rest of the year to eased COVID-19 restrictions, heightening consumer demand in the service sector such as tourism. As for the slow pace of growth, China's slower than expected rebound and the slump in the manufacturing sector was said to be contributing factors. Just last week, the World Bank downgraded its forecast for China's growth next year, with the world's second biggest economy predicted to expand at one of its lowest rates since the 1960s. The IMF also predicted that rising consumer prices are likely to stabilize due to continued high interest rates as well as a decline in global prices for raw materials. However, it said that there will be a gradual decline in target levels for inflation. Most countries are supposedly set to achieve target levels by 2025. Core inflation, the changing costs of goods and services, excluding volatile food and energy prices, was adjusted to slow at a more gradual pace this year. Some key economic tasks for governments going forward were said to be maintaining fiscal soundness through the expansion of stable sources of tax revenue. Structural reform and improvement of fiscal policies to enhance overall economic production were cited as mid to long-term goals. Moon Hae-ryun, Arirang News.
South Korea's LG Electronics posted its second highest operating profit ever for the third quarter this year, despite the sluggish economy and weak consumer demand. In a regulatory filing on Tuesday, LG Electronics said that its operating profit surged more than 33% from the previous year to 967.7 trillion won, or around $740 million during the July to September period. Although sales fell slightly more than 2% compared to a year earlier to around $15.3 billion, it was still the second highest sales recorded for the third quarter, with the highest being from the previous year. This was largely owed to the company expanding its B2B operations in its auto parts and heating, ventilation, and air conditioning businesses, as well as the strong performance from its home appliance sector. Samsung Electronics and SK Hynix have been granted waivers from U.S. restrictions that look to limit their business operations in China. The presidential office in Seoul says it's a result of the country having strengthened its bilateral alliance with Washington. Our correspondent Oh Soo-young has details.
The United States has suspended restrictions indefinitely on South Korea's largest chip makers importing American semiconductor equipment to their factories in China as Seoul works to resolve its biggest bottlenecks in global trade. On Monday, Senior Presidential Secretary for Economic Affairs Choi Sang-mok said the US government designated Samsung Electronics and SK Hynix's semiconductor plants in China as verified end users. This allows the two firms to import sensitive tech items for use in their Chinese chip factories without the need to obtain a permit each time.
This decision by the US government means that the biggest trade issue for Korean chip makers has been resolved. This has also greatly alleviated uncertainties related to their factory operations and investments in China.
Last October, the US imposed new rules to restrict advanced computing and chip production gear from entering China to curb the growth of Beijing's chip industry and its stealing of technology. Samsung and SK Hynix had a one-year exemption, but Seoul has for months been pushing for an extension of that grace period, which was set to expire this month. Semiconductors last year made up almost a fifth of South Korea's exports. More than 40% of Samsung's NAND chips and half of SK Hynix's DRAM chips are produced at plants in China. While noting that other trade issues may arise in the future, Yoon's economic aide said Washington's waiver came about as Presidents Yoon and Joe Biden, since their first summit in May last year, have committed to close cooperation on high-tech supply chains while strengthening their bilateral alliance. Chair also projected optimism on Korean auto giant's green car sales in the US market, saying the Korean government has been helping them secure subsidies under Washington's Inflation Reduction Act, which sets out assembly and battery requirements that largely favor American firms with domestic manufacturing. Furthermore, amid various headwinds facing the Korean economy, Chair said the Yoon government boosted foreign direct investment to unprecedented levels, recording almost $24 billion from January to September, a rise of 11.3% on year. Greenfield investment in high-tech industries like chips and batteries, he said, are likely to help strengthen supply chains and create new jobs across the domestic economy. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
In other news, in a bid to reduce emissions, facilities in Australia comes up with a technology that captures and stores carbon dioxide in its empty gas fields under the sea. South Korea also plans to lessen carbon emissions using this in partnership with Australia. Yoon-jin explains.
On the northernmost tip of Australia is the Darwin LNG terminal. The 13-story tall carbon capture facility has been running for 18 years. It works by spraying chemical absorbents on natural gas and separating carbon dioxide as residue. Through this process, roughly 600,000 tons of carbon dioxide is captured each year. In South Korea, until now, waste carbon dioxide has been evaporated into the air, but there is plan to decrease such carbon emissions by using an underwater carbon reservoir in partnership with Australia. This would help achieve carbon reduction targets and generate profits through emissions trading. Australia is heading a cross-border carbon capture and storage, or CCS, project that involves transporting the natural gas produced in the Barossa gas fields to the Darwin LNG plant, where the carbon dioxide is captured, and then sending the carbon dioxide to the Bayu-Undan fields in the Timor Sea. This process achieves energy development and carbon dioxide storage at the same time and saves on costs by using the pipelines that are already in place for natural gas transportation. South Korea's involvement in the project will help secure some 1.3 million tons of low-carbon LNG per year, as well as providing a location for carbon dioxide storage.
The LNG produced in the Barossa gas field will be exported to Korea to be used as the energy source for our blue hydrogen production, and the CO2 generated during the blue hydrogen production is then transported to Australia for CCS.
Such projects to further develop carbon storage are in full swing globally, as CCS collaboration across borders is becoming more active.
CCS is critical to the future of our nations. We need to use every tool available in the toolbox to combat climate change and to decarbonise our economies. That the Northern Territory Government is a big supporter of the Barossa project and the CCS projects here.
South Korea has a shortage of carbon dioxide storage locations, and these latest cross-border CCS projects seem to be the solution. Yoon-jin, Arirang News.
In South Korea, free flu vaccinations for senior citizens begin this Wednesday, starting with those aged 75 and up. People aged between 70 and 74 can get their shots from October 16th, and those ages 65 to 69 from October 19th. Vaccinations will be available until the end of next April. The Korea Disease Control and Prevention Agency is strongly advising seniors to get the flu and COVID-19 shots together. Free COVID-19 vaccines for those 65 and older will be available from October 19th until next March. Those who wish to get both can find the nearest designated hospital or public health care center on the KDCA website. as the use of generative AI becomes more diverse, it's bringing changes in the way we work. But concerns about ethical issues and regulatory measures are also rising. Our business correspondent Shin-Young spoke with Microsoft's Chief Communications Officer about the rapidly growing generative AI market.
As the race for the development of generative artificial intelligence intensifies, AI has been permeating people's daily lives. Microsoft, one of the leading players in AI market, has integrated its AI assistant Copilot into its products including Windows 11 and MS 365 to enhance productivity of complex and cumbersome tasks. A chief communications officer of Microsoft emphasized the importance of thinking about the meaning of the new tool.
One of the less helpful things that has happened is that all this technology, all these tools have been sort of put in this box and people have put a label on it and they said it's AI. Mm-hmm. And so people just talk about AI as a thing instead of thinking about it as a set of new tools that have come along. Mm-hmm. And so anytime there's something new, there is a natural concern, like what does this mean for me? What does it mean for my industry? What does it mean for my country? And especially if it's something as amorphous as AI.
According to market research firm Grandview Research, the global generative AI market is estimated to grow to over $109 billion by 2030 from around $10 billion in 2022. Amid the growing market, South Korea has set AI sector as one of 12 national strategic technologies to focus on and aims to sharpen its competitive edge in AI.
Yeah, I think South Korea is pretty well positioned. It's a country that has really invested in technology over the years and that has shown it's got great innovation capability. And with AI, the people that will do the best are the ones that adopt early and really drive intensity of use. South Korea is in a pretty good place for those things.
He pointed out education and healthcare sectors as promising industries where AI can be applied.
There's a challenge in that they're trying to enter in the information at the same time as they're talking to you. There's so much research that's happening with medicine right now, and now you have the idea of a co-pilot that can sit there with them and say, okay, here's some new research that you might want to think about as it applies to this specific patient.
Countries across the globe have been seeking ways to mitigate dangers of the emerging technology. Last month, leaders of U.S. tech giants including Microsoft, Google, and Meta gathered and discussed AI regulations with lawmakers in Washington.
If you think about AI as a major new platform shift with lots of new capabilities, and you understand how important technology generally is to the way people live and work today, governments absolutely should be thinking about how will it show up in their market, what are the specific harms that they want to prevent, and we're committed to working with them.
He added that Microsoft has already been contemplating principles around ethical AI use for several years and welcomes cooperation with regulators on this matter. Shin-Young, Arirang News.
Most inland regions will see a big contrast in daily temperatures tomorrow. Some will see a gap of 10 degrees in between day and night. For Chuncheon in Gangwon-do province, morning lows will be dropping to single figures, while highs will be jumping to 22 degrees. Please be extra careful not to catch a cold during this time of the year. And with lows dropping significantly overnight, any frost is likely to be patchy. Frost is most likely for mountainous regions, where temperatures will be falling below 5 degrees. Also for the East Coast, high waves are forecast across the ocean. For those fishing or boating, make sure to refer to the latest weather forecast. We'll see a wide variation for morning temperatures across the nation. Readings will range from 9 to 17 degrees nationwide. So I'll be starting off at 13 degrees. As for the daily highs, Seoul, Daejeon, Daegu, and Gyeongju will be topping out at 23 degrees. Typical autumn weather conditions will prevail for the time being. A few clouds will start to move in on Friday. That's all for now, and here are the weather conditions around the world.
Well, that brings an end to tonight's newscast. Thank you for watching. We'll be back tomorrow with the latest news. Good night.